And we are live.
All right, thank you, Alex. Welcome, everybody. This is the State Senate Committee on Institutions. Today is January 18th, 2022. I am Joe Benning, the chair of the committee. I'm the Caledonia District State Senator. We also have Senators Ingalls from Essex Orleans, Senator Mazza from Colchester Grand Isle, Senator Parent from Franklin, and Senator McCormick from Windsor. We are talking about a couple of different things this afternoon. We're going to lead off with Building and General Services update from Joe Aja. Joe, welcome back to Senate Institutions. The process, I think you know it pretty well. We simply ask folks to introduce themselves initially, give us a little background on who you are and what you do. And the floor will then be yours to let us know how things are going with BGS these days. With that, I will also say for the public's benefit that we try to keep things down to a low level for vernacular purposes. So if you happen to use some terminology that I understand and you understand, but I red flag it because I think the public may not, I may interrupt you and ask you to talk about what that is. Having said all that, the floor is yours. Welcome back.
Well, thank you, Senators. Joe Aja, I'm with Design and Buildings and General Services. I am the Director for Design and Construction, and I oversee 13 project managers right now to help with the design and construction and renovations of all of the BGS-owned buildings. That includes, State House, state office buildings, labs, correctional facilities, mental health facilities, and just regular office buildings. So we touch just about everything. We do not touch A&R buildings or VTrans buildings. So speaking of the State House HVAC project, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning. Had funding a while ago to investigate. If you remember back in 2018, we had a mold issue in the State House. And so we were initially investigating how to do away with the mold, and we had realized that with the high humid summers that we were having of longer duration, and with the air conditioning in the building that did not have a means for dehumidification, we were looking at a way to dehumidify the State House. And that included basically a means of reheating the supercooled air so it could be dehumidified. At that point in time, we were looking at basically just a boiler of some sort to provide that reheat capability and changing out the air handling unit coils, perhaps, maybe the air handlers themselves. However, then COVID hit. And with COVID, we were running around looking at airflows in all of the committee rooms and spaces inside the State House and realized with that study that we do not have the airflows to meet today's standards, and that's Ashrae. And Ashrae is a standards company who has developed a method for air handling systems for design and construction. Has nothing to do about health quality. It's about what this company believes that should be a standard, and a lot of mechanical engineers throughout the U.S. use that as a standard when they design their systems. In Vermont, we have not adopted this standard. So, but most of our engineers do use this standard. It's about how much fresh air, along with other things, come into a room. And it's sized, it depends on the number of people and the size of the room. So from what we gathered during COVID, we realized that just adding a summer boiler and rearranging the coils so that our heating coil was after the cooling coil, that we had to do additional work. And so we've spent the better part of 9 months chasing what that design should look like. And it really looks like having to change out all of the air handler systems and a lot of the other systems inside the State House. Those systems being pipes, pumps, digital DDC, otherwise known as direct digital control. And that's the control of the systems to monitor the humidity, and tell the boiler when to come on, when to do cooling, when to do heating. So we had our design, phases of design, we're programming, schematic design, design development, and then we do bidding and construction documents, and then our bidding for construction. We have completed so far to date our programming and our schematic design. We're now in the design development phase. And so what we have looked at in our programming, which was completed in August, and our schematic design, which was completed in November, is what, as you said, was having to replace a lot of the system, including ductworks. Some of that does take into account the airflow that when you were in the State House, if you remember that in some areas of a committee room, it could be hotter and cooler than others with the air blowing on you. What we're looking at is also a comfort situation. It doesn't have to be done, but while you're going in and changing out an air handling system, we believe we should be looking at that also. How to better distribute the air in a room than it is to just have it blow from one side to the other, and to provide better comfort so that, the fan's not blowing on one side of the room onto one or two individual people, and the other side of the room having it hot. So that, of course, has increased our initial estimate of what we originally thought, because we had a smaller project in mind back in 2018. So now we are looking at a larger project to replace all of this. And what that'll do is the existing air handling system is steam coils. When we go to a summer boiler, we'll be converting everything to hot water. So those pipes do have to be changed out, some of the pumps and the likes of that. Questions so far?
How long of a period of time are we talking about for that to be done?
I don't, without a complete design, I'm not 100% sure. We took a little change about a month and a half ago when we were looking at this and what could we do this summer. And so this summer, what we're looking at doing is installing the summer boiler, and the looks of things doing air handlers 1 and 2, which is really satisfying your comfort levels in the Senate. It's the air handlers that are down in the bunkers, in the bunker. So we believe we can get that designed and constructed before you come back next year. At that same time, we will be concurrently working on the rest of the design for the remaining part of the building. What does come into play is the discussion that has been going on all summer long, is the addition to the State House. I really don't want to be going into portions of the State House, specifically the House section and the cafeteria, changing out those systems, not knowing exactly what we're going to be doing, if anything, for an addition. So this phasing that we have in place right now actually works out in our benefit. We get to start construction on a portion. One of the major things that we need to address is that summer boiler, so we can start dehumidifying parts of the State House. So that does work in our favor. Depending on how large of a project it is, and or if there's an addition plan for the State House to incorporate that, it could be 1 or 2 summers more to do 100% replacement. Some of that also has to deal with the environment of today in the economy, getting parts and also labor. So I don't want to overpromise and say we could do this in 2 summers without really knowing what the climate is out there for the economy of labor and cost. So we need that design complete in time.
There was another part of the ongoing series of projects. I don't know if you're going to talk about it yet. If you are, stop me, but if you hadn't planned on it, I'd like to know where we are with respect to moving the IT servers.
That design is still underway. It has slowed a little bit due to COVID, and with Kevin Moore having to fit up the State House for the return of you guys. And so that we need some specific data on heat loads from him. As soon as we get that, we'll be able to finish the design at 133 State Street, and then we can go to construction. So we are still, that's still in the works and moving forward. As I said, though, it just slowed down a little bit because everybody out is out straight dealing with COVID issues or COVID-related issues.
Is there an initial plan to remove the servers from the State House basement before that happens, or are we talking about waiting for the design plan to come through and then moving the servers out of the basement?
The design and construction has to be completed before moving the servers out of the basement of the State House. So that does have to happen first. We got to complete the design and then do the construction. Hopefully that can all happen within a year, but I'm not certain. We got to get back on a design.
Okay, anybody else have questions for Joe at this point? What else would you like to tell us?
Then we can move on to the batteries if we're all done talking about HVAC. The batteries, if you remember the battery project, initially started out looking at replacing the old generator that was in the basement right next to the IT room in the basement of the State House. And it was suggested that we investigate batteries. So we did investigate batteries. In fact, we actually completed the design and installed them last year. However, our insurance company, who assesses 20% of our buildings every year, had it on their list to assess the State House last year. So they did a walkthrough back in, I want to say it was March, April. And what they found was that they had some issues with our battery room, the way it was set up and in their interpretation of the code. The insurance company looks at the present day codes and standards as they come out and get adopted. In this case, it was NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. And NFPA has come out with a standard numbered 855. 855 is a standard that was adopted in August 25th of 2019, and it's for the installation of stationary energy storage systems, basically battery style systems. And in that standard states that battery systems should not be stored below grade, should not be stored in an electrical room, should not be located as such that you have to go through an electrical room to get to it, needs a second means of egress, and you got to bring in the fire department, your local fire department, have a discussion with them as to how that they are going to attack that fire if it happened. So once we heard of this, we investigated it, and the state fire marshal is the one who approves and adopts codes and standards for the state of Vermont. Presently, we are operating under NFPA for electrical. It's 2017. For what's called NFPA 1, fire safety, it's 2015. In 2015, the codes that we designed to and constructed to only require a 2R rated wall. So with that, we initially thought we were okay. We did have a propane gas line running through there that runs from the tank out front to the cafeteria, which we cannot have in there under the new standard and everything else. So we were looking to relocate that. Further discussion with the fire marshal was whether or not this new standard by NFPA 855 was going to be adopted in whole or in part, and also be retroactive. If it became retroactive, we would have to do a lot of work with the batteries that are in place, basically relocate them.
Joe, you used the term 2-hour wall. Probably ought to explain that a little bit.
The UL laboratories have developed compositions of materials to rate the fire rating of a wall, a 20-minute wall, a 1-hour wall, 2-hour rated wall, etc. You can use different materials to obtain this rating. And so in the case at the State House, we have a concrete block wall that has the proper rating. The 8-inch concrete block is a 2-hour rated wall. So that works, along with the mass of the brick arches that we have for the structure of the State House, and then the concrete floor above that, and then the masonry walls surrounding the other 3.
So just to bring it down as low as we can get it, the rating is for what reason?
How long a fire takes to basically breach, in this case, a wall. So a 2-hour rated wall, it should withstand a fire on the other side for 2 hours before the wall fails.
Thank you.
And so these are the things that we looked at. And after not knowing what the direction the fire marshal was going to take, we decided the best thing to do would be to relocate the batteries outside of the building. It would certainly make our insurance company happier. If the standard became retroactive, we would have to relocate them anyway. And so what we decided to do is in October, I think it was in October, we pulled the batteries. They're sitting out with the manufacturer right now, connected to the grid, being charged and discharged, keeping them in warm storage, if you will, while we develop a plan on how to house the batteries outside of the State House. Talking with the manufacturer of the batteries, they do provide and have provided to other people and facilities a structure that's similar to a transformer or vault, a metal vault. And what this does is the batteries sit just inside of it. You take the sides off that you need to in order to work on these batteries, and you put the covers back on, everything's good. You do not need to connect a fire suppression system to them. You can, but because you're not working in it, it's not required. One of the suggestions they do have that with batteries in that type of situation, or even in a building, is to have the ability to connect a fire hose to it. Because the best means of snubbing out a fire with a lithium batteries is to smother it, whether you do that with a gas and or just flooding the vault with water. Both of them can work. So that's what we're working with our design engineer right now, is how and specifically where to build this vault outside of the State House. The insurance company would like it 50 feet away from the State House, although code only suggests 10. It's because the State House, being its historic nature, a little bit further away, they would feel a lot more comfortable. So what we're looking at is on the southwest corner of the parking lot on the western side of the State House. Roughly there's 5 parking spaces there right before the guardhouse and the gate, is taking up 1 parking space and putting this metal container in that location. And then the feeds will run into the building, we'll connect back up, and we're hoping to have that completed at the end of this year. So that's sort of the batteries in a nutshell. So that's why if you walk by the west entrance right now, you will see the generator sitting outside, inside of a fenced-in area.
Senator McMaza, you're muted.
Why do different insurance companies require different standards? I mean, you say that it's like 10 foot away, but they do require 50 foot. Isn't there a set standard for every insurance?
That I can't answer because I'm only dealing with our insurance company, but based on my own experience with insurance company, you can go to the next one and probably get a different deal. But this is who we're working with. 50 feet away from the building works out actually well in our favor for having a place as opposed to right tight to the building. There's not a good location to try and hide that box, if you will.
But
For
you have to
people
bury
wondering
you have to bury the lines for 50 feet. You have to bury the lines.
That is correct, we would.
That's pretty expensive. You do that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we'd be going down, we'd be digging across the parking lot, going down roughly 30 inches into the ground and running those lines over to it. But yes,
There are a lot of ledge in that area.
Jeez.
potentially yes, but where we are going to be crossing is the same, roughly the same location that the steam and electrical lines that leave the State House and go to 1 Baldwin, known as the Pink Lady. So there's also 2 catch basins in the area that are considerably deep. So we're hoping for the best. When I dig, I will let you know if I hit any ledge.
Hope they don't come
Good at
back next
finding
year.
lead.
Want it 60 feet away, so we got another problem.
Well, if I go too far, then I'm in the drive to the backside of the State House in 1 Baldwin. So
It's just funny, they make policies on their own when some don't require and others do. It's interesting.
that's true.
Yeah.
But we're still looking at what is, best for the State House. And if I gotta go 10 feet, minimum 10 feet outside the State House, 50 feet is a little bit further, costs a little bit more, but then I'm making the insurance company happy also.
Other
Access to,
questions? Go ahead.
Pardon?
Go ahead. I'm sorry I cut you
I
off.
was gonna say access to it at the 50-foot area as opposed to 10 feet off of the building is probably better in the long run.
Anything else you wanted to tell us about the batteries?
That's all I've got on the batteries. So,
Okay. I'd like to circle back a bit and talk about the Ashrae Standards and the House and the Senate issues. As I recall, the current situation for House committees, they can meet the Ashrae Standards if there's an override presented at any point in time where they're needed. The House committees, on the other hand, can't get there. Keeping in mind that this is creature comfort we're talking about and not COVID protection. Actually, I'm making that statement, but let's just back up a hair and say, is there some reason to pursue that path for COVID protection purposes?
it will provide, once the work is completed, it will provide fresh air to meet the Ashrae standard into the room. The Ashrae standard and having fresh air coming in does not prevent the spread of COVID or prevent it from spreading through the filter system. So it still isn't an optimal situation. It would provide more air, more fresh air into the room. They would still be sitting elbow to elbow in that tight space. What I would also have to do is some of the ductwork has to be enlarged to provide that, or if, I'm not sure if you were familiar, after we did the duct cleaning with the mold issue in 2018, the issue that we had was we rebalanced the system and realized that the return, I believe it was a return air system, was not running as fast as it should be. And so we upped the speed on it. The problem is the people down in the 20s could not withstand the noise that ductwork was making. And if you remember testifying any time this summer or being in the legislative lounge, there is that nice white noise running in the background the whole time. That would get worse if we're pushing more air through that ductwork. So in order to enlarge the ducts, I do have to tear apart some of the walls in the 20s and the 30s and up to the 40s. So what we're looking to do to help with or pricing anyways, for the creature comfort is instead of those windows, the units that are typically by the windows or next to the windows, the induction units where the air comes out, is doing away with those and having the air supply in return being ducted through the ceiling. So now we're providing better circulation in each of the rooms. So it's not blowing on every one individual person at once. So these are the things that we're looking into. Getting the house done sooner probably is not the best way to go.
Meaning that you want to wait until the final proposals are made about the redesign of the State House.
Yes, but it's also if there is going to be an addition and the rooms in the 20s, 30s, and 40s get adjusted. If you remember the French Freeman report that was put out early last year, what you saw was that, I can't remember the 20s, but in the 30s and the 40s, they were taking 3 of the committee rooms and dividing them and creating 2 large committee rooms and leaving 1 alone. The reason, certainly in the 30s, and the reason they were doing that is the ductwork is passing up in through that wall. If you were to actually be tearing out a wall or 2 on that floor, since we have to enlarge the ducts, would it be worthwhile to move that ductwork a foot, 18 inches, 2 feet now and make 3 good-sized committee rooms and not shortchange yourself by not moving that wall because the ductwork's in there? So we would take that into account. The last 2 air handlers are for the cafeteria and the mezzanine. Changing those out now with a potential addition going on top of the cafeteria, we would have to remove those units and purchase new ones. So the sequence we're going in gets us ahead of the game, getting some work done this summer while we're still potentially making decisions about the rest of the building later on.
Okay.
If we were not moving walls or enlarging the ductwork in the house and or not doing an potential addition onto the roof of the cafeteria, we would reevaluate and look at what the biggest bang for a buck is. But because of those, it clearly is the summer boiler, which we need to dehumidify. So then what is the next best option to do? And it just so happens to be the Senate.
Okay. Committee, any other questions? Joe, I think you've either sent them all into glazy-eyed Blearland, or I'm not sure, but
There's no glitter and fun stuff and batteries and HVAC.
well, I'm sure you're going to be back. So we appreciate
Yes.
the introduction, and we'll be seeing you again at some point. But I think for that, lack of any other questions, that about does it for you.
Okay. Oh, I'm happy to return at any time.
Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
for having me. All right. Bye.
Bye. Alex, I have Thomas Kennedy scheduled at 2:30, which is 2 minutes from now. Might he be around?
He has not joined the call yet. I will reach out and let him know we're ready for him.
Okay. For those of you on YouTube, we don't have an automatic commercial break or public service announcement.
Can't you tell us something about yourself? Or
I can tell something about you guys, and that
Well,
essentially means our last witness. I hope you were listening to all that, because you guys are going to be asking more of those questions in another year or so. This has been a very frustrating road for me personally, because I've been working all summer and fall trying to get this issue moving. We don't appear to have gotten very far, and I understand the obstacles, but it's been a long road to hoe, and I haven't seen much progress. That's not to disparage anybody, but this committee, I think, is going to have to put the pressure on and keep that pressure on if we're going to get things accomplished. In the meantime, how's your son doing, Corey?
He's doing well. He's taking a nap right now. He was in ag this morning, and every time on the video, he'd stick his tongue out. So I had to keep hiding myself. He was giving Pearson and Bobby the good old sticking his tongue out at him.
Well, I can't think of any 2 finer senators to stick a tongue out at. So.
Yeah, it's like clockwork. As soon as I shut my office door, he gets glued to my window. He's like, I want to come in.
I was very surprised that Senator Baruth was able to pick out his pajamas from half a mile away.
I know, me too. He's like, are those Spider-Man? I'm like, yep, they are. We have like 4 favorite pairs of pajamas, and so when they're dirty, he gets a little upset till laundry day, and then as soon as laundry day's here, he's good for 4 days.
Yep.
But no, he's probably in the best shape of all of us. I've got a little bit of a sore throat and a runny nose. Wife's similar, and our newborn, she's a little stuffy as well. But we tested negative over the weekend, but we have another test tomorrow.
Huh.
And my wife and I are vaccinated and boosted, so it is what it is.
Thomas Kennedy has just entered. I'm going to let him in.
Thanks, Alex. Alex, you might want to reach out to Senator Hooker and Becky Wasserman just to see if you can't get them to come in a few minutes early. Mr. Kennedy.
Roger that, will do.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Great.
First off, I understand you're here to talk about the report that was issued on the Southeast State Correctional Facility. We'd like to get an update on that as much as possible if you can.
Sure.
I'm not sure if you've ever been before us before, but the basics of this YouTube process are that we are dealing with an unknown audience. So I try to keep it as low level as possible in making explanations. We ask you first to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and have how you fit into this project, so to speak. The other part is that when you're speaking, and if you happen to go into some vernacular or language that you understand and I might understand, if it's red flag for me that somebody in the audience might not understand it, I might stop you and interrupt and ask you to explain X, Y, or Z, whatever that might be. The committee, I don't know if you've ever met the committee before, but we have Senator Ingalls from Essex Orleans, Senator Amaza from Colchester Grand Isle, Senator McCormick from Windsor, and Senator Parent from Franklin County. They may have questions for you at the end of the discussion, but for now, the floor is yours. Welcome to Senate Institutions.
Great. Thank you very much. For the record, my name is Tom Kennedy. I am the Director of Community Development. At the time of this report, I was the Executive Director of Mount Escutney Regional Commission, and I gave up that position on January 1st. Background on this is I was asked by Representative Emmons. We are located in the southeastern part of the state, and Representative Emmons is a constituent in our, or she's a legislator from Springfield, which is one of our towns. So she asked if we would, if I would facilitate this meeting. So
that's usually the place, Tom, where I interrupt you and offer you my condolences for having Alice Emmons as your representative. We have a friendly rivalry between the House and the Senate. I always try to make that clear to anybody that anytime I get the opportunity. So
He's not going to bite on that one.
I also learned is do not become too good of friends with area legislators because they assign you to volunteer for things. So, so I worked with Eric Philcorn from the Department of Buildings and General Services. We were tasked with to look at possible uses for the correctional facility located in Windsor, Vermont. The first meeting we had was in July, and Eric went over previous studies that have been done of the facility with the members. So let me back up. We also, the membership of the committee was Allison Eastman, the Deputy Secretary from Agency of Agriculture, Gus Seelig or Jen Holler from VHCB or Vermont Housing Conservation Board, Tate Brooks from Deputy Secretary, Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and Lewis Porter, Commissioner from Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Tom Marsh, who is the town manager in Windsor. So as I said earlier, we went over previous studies, and then the committee asked Tom Marsh about what the town's desires were for potential redevelopment in the site, and also what the town has been doing as far as trying to market the site. Over the weekend, I got a survey that was done from Mr. Marsh, and I forwarded it to your administrative assistant, and I believe you folks have a copy of the survey. So what the town has made very, very clear is they would not like to see another large prison or another large state facility on the property. They would like to see something as far as a public-private type of partnership there, something where they could basically add to their tax base, and also be potentially for employment. As many of you may know, there's 800 acres associated with this site that is a conservation district, and Lewis Porter mentioned that it is one of the best birding sites in Vermont, and so the town is very excited about that. They like having that there. There's also trails and the like that people can use for hiking and the like. Mr. Marsh also in his comments mentioned that they have been working with the Springfield Regional Development Corporation. They've had a number of what I'll call tire kickers to go and look at the site. But given the way the outlay of the site and the buildings, it's a tough sell. One of the a couple of the issues are there are some buildings there that are in poor shape that probably need to be demolished, and the razor wire makes it difficult for people to as far as trying to sell the building. And then the building itself where the prison was, it's of let's just say it's an atypical shape and configuration. So towards the end of that meeting, we did a round robin of the officials, and we asked them initially what did they think of the site and the like. And they said it's very difficult as far as what they might want to use it for. Is, for instance, office space was something that was brought up. And given what's been going on with the pandemic and the like, it's really unclear what the future holds for having office buildings with so much telecommuting going on. So they just wanted to hold that. So they didn't think at this point, for the most part, any of them would want to use the facility for office space. Fish and Wildlife said that they might have some interest in using some of the one of the buildings for storage for boats and canoes and for some of the equipment that they use. So we left that first meeting with, go back, talk to the people in your respective agencies and see whether or not you had some interest in this and what it might be. The second meeting consisted of Representative Emmons giving a legislator overview of the history of the site and what the legislature, what the intent of the legislature has been. And so she did that. Then we asked the members of the various committees to ask what they might want to do with it. And again, the Department of Ag came back and said the ag soils are such there that they didn't really see much of a use for it. Fish and Wildlife said they might be able to use it, but at this point, they really didn't want to make a commitment to much of the property. Vermont Housing Conservation Board said that the site could be a place where they could do some housing. The site presently is serviced by sewer and water from the town. We also asked, after that, Bob Flint from the Springfield Regional Development talked about his efforts to try to market the place. And a couple of things that he said is, one is there would need to be significant demolition of the facility to make it more marketable. There appears to be very little interest in either leasing or purchasing in fee simple the site as is. And then he also mentioned that the procurement procedures for both purchasing the site and for leasing the site that are in statute or rule make it difficult for the private sector to want to participate in this. And basically what it comes down to simply is, if you're going to lease it or if you're going to sell it in fee simple, you actually need to do an RFP to meet procurement. So after that was discussed, there then became more of a general discussion about trying to create a more campus-like development on the site, where you could have smaller state types of facilities there, housing and private sector facility. And so I'm a land use planner, and we call that sort of a mixed use type of situation, where you could, it would be a campus, and you could try to meld some of the things that the state facility might have there with the private sector, for instance. And that seemed to take on quite a bit of people seem to like that idea, as far as trying to come up with a campus-like type of facility. The other thing is that it is unclear. Well, it wasn't unclear. Is that they're trying to. One of the things that the committee members kept asking, and they asked Alice this, or Representative Emmons this, was, what does the legislature want to do with the facility? Do you want to keep it? Do you want to sell it? Do you want to lease it? What it is? And it's unclear exactly what the intent of the legislature is on that. Then Mr. Philcorn got into talking about what the costs are associated with the facility. And presently, the state of Vermont spends about $250,000 a year in paying for hookup fees to the town of Windsor, heating the building, and just general maintenance, plowing, mowing, and et cetera. He mentioned that every 5 years that the state owns that site, you're basically paying in maintenance fees the value of the property. I don't think there has been and I stand corrected if there has, I don't think there's necessarily been a valuation of the property, but people are using a figure of about $1.5 million is what the value of the property is. It also it seems that it would be about $1.5 million if you wanted to clean the site and remove all the structures on the site, including the their razor wire. So one of the thoughts was, a couple of thoughts was, one is possibly changing some of the procurement procedures that BGS has to use on that site. Two is maybe lease a portion of the site to a nonprofit, such as the Springfield Regional Development Corporation, if the town wanted to lease part of the land, and they would partner with BGS. And again, this would be a way to try to circumvent some of the statutory provisions, if you will. Let me see. So the committee basically recommends is to develop a strategic plan that has a cost analysis for the future use of the site. In testimony last week with the House Committee, Mr. Philcorn said that Buildings and General Services is going to be issuing an RFP to look at what it would cost to demo all the site or certain aspects of the site. And I think what the upshot, though, is to truly try to do something with the site is the legislature really needs to try to figure out what exactly they want to do with the site and make it clear what they want to do with the site. VHCB is interested in trying to do housing there. There was also discussions about trying to partner with our area hospitals. We are about 15 miles away from Dartmouth Hitchcock. Mount Scottney Hospital is probably 2 miles down the road from there. In this part of Vermont, as you know, as we know, in all of Vermont, we have a tremendous housing shortage down here, and we really need to have workforce housing and market rate housing. So the conclusion for it, and again, I'll be reiterating what I said, is a strategic plan needs to be developed for the site. The legislature needs to, and I'm sorry, I missed this. The legislature, if you're going to continue to maintain the site, you're going to have to start to appropriate more money on an annual basis to the site, because you need to start to take down some of the buildings. There are some buildings, no matter what you do with the site, they are decrepit and they need to come down. And then the other reality of the site is that the site may have a value of $1.5 million. You may need to spend $1 million to clean it up. And I used the analogy last week. It's almost like a brownfield site. Brownfields, the really what you're looking for with brownfields is that you may spend actually more money to clean up the brownfield site, but in the end, you're going to have a site that's much more financially and economically viable. And so, you really need to look at sites like this more in the long term. And then finally is, there seems to be quite a bit of, there is consensus as far as possibly having a public-private partnership. So, and then just to fill you in a little bit on what they said on the House side is the House, they seem to be, they wanted to do is to look at, what are the needs for the corrections in the future. That was something that was brought up last week. The other thing is that it's difficult for the state to buy, to get land, to build facilities. They own this. And so it may be, beneficial to keep this site or to have a smaller footprint and do something that has both a state and a private function. So that's my testimony.
Is there any discussion about the possibility of a roughly 6 to 10 bed facility for at-risk youth?
It was brought up at the meeting. It was brought up at the meeting, and it was also brought up last week as far as with that issue. And the town, we know that the town doesn't want to see any large scale facilities. And I don't want to speak for the town. You may want to ask the town manager to come in and to talk to the committee, but that might be something of a scale that would be amenable to the town. And those are the types of things that, I think that the committee was thinking about, is having something of a smaller scale that wouldn't have a, traffic impacts or whatever. We also, after we had these meetings, we contacted our local transit provider, and we could get transit to that site if we needed to, as far as for traffic and all that.
Senator McCormick.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I have not spoken to the town recently specifically about this, but I can say in general that when we were trying to locate the southeastern facility that's now in Springfield, the town of Windsor voted against it. There were some people who wanted it because it had the earlier prison had been a major employer in the town, and the prison farm had been an employer. So there were some people who thought it would be good, it would make jobs, but the clear majority in the town voted against it. And the other thing is that they want some kind of use of that. And even there, it's a large tract of land, and there are a lot of people who want to keep it open, birding, for example, and hiking. And it is a community asset. But it's also is that if you look at the map, Windsor is half the size of a Vermont town. Windsor and West Windsor, which is not a region of Windsor. West Windsor is a separate town. The two of them add up to the size of a town. And Windsor had a rich grand list at one time because it was an industrial, a little city, a little industrial town, but that's pretty much gone. And it's a town heroically bouncing back, but they do have a property tax paucity. So I think what they are looking for is some kind of moderate, reasonable use that uses part of the land but leaves most of it green. And again, I want to emphasize I'm speaking in generalizations, having represented the town for 30 years, but I haven't spoken to them specifically about this recently.
You happen to know off the top of your head how many beds are in the Southeast Regional Correctional Facility?
I don't.
Just trying to get a sense from the conversation I'm hearing here about what kind of pushback would be had. I'm understanding that the correctional facility has at least a couple of hundred inmates, and understanding why the town would provide pushback to that, trying to see what the resistance would be in the event of a 6 to 10 bed facility for at-risk youth that was to be part of this public private enterprise.
Even though Springfield voted for the prison to go there, and we kind of sweetened the pot for them. They got a pool out of it and some other, some upgrades of the streets. There's a large faction in Springfield that opposed it and still does. They blame me. They think I forced it on them. I actually insisted that they have a vote and kind of worked to stop it in Windsor because they voted against it. Worked to have it happen in Springfield because they voted for it. But there's still a lot of folks in Springfield who just hate the prison.
So there's if I may, so I've been here for almost 30 years working in various capacities. And one of the things that I think has worked really well is the legislature and the state agencies have had forums where they meet with the community and they discuss proposes as far as uses for their property. And that's worked out very, very well. And people come and they will voice their opinion. About 2 years ago, Fish and Wildlife led a series of meetings in the town looking for ideas from the public as far as what they would like to see up there. And those things generally aren't as successful as everyone would like it to be, because there's just the citizenry with ideas and no sense of what the market might be or capital and the like. But I think Senator McCormick has been to some of these forums that we've had, and that's worked out well. As I said at the other meeting, if it's something for instance, if you're thinking of at-risk housing for youth and so on, we certainly would work with the legislature to set up community forums to talk about that and other types of development that the state might be interested in.
Well, you're probably aware there's a discussion about a potential Plan B in the event that Newbury fails. And I'm just trying to keep all options potentially open and understand what the potential minefields might be as we look at those potential options.
Yeah.
Committee, other questions for Mr. Kennedy? Well, I'm going to ask one last one. Have you spent any time in the State House?
Yes, I have quite a bit.
You're
And
aware that
you may know someone who is also active in the State House who happens to be my son. So Connor Kennedy is my son.
Well, I'm actually going to go in the opposite direction. In the State House, there's a room called the Cedar Creek Room,
Yes.
and it's dominated by a huge painting of the Cedar Creek battlefield. And right smack dab in the middle are a group of Vermonters who were actually soldiers in the Civil War, and the artist painted them into the painting. And in the exact middle of the painting is a red-haired, red-bearded captain of the 6th Vermont named Thomas Kennedy. Any relation by chance?
No, sadly, I wish I was a native Vermonter, but we came in the bottom of the boat and ended up in Brooklyn, New York when we came over from Ireland.
Okay.
I wasn't a
curious.
Boston Kennedy either, sadly.
Well, I've run into a few of his descendants, but the next time you're in the State House and you're walking by that painting,
I'll go and look at
right,
that. Yes.
right in the middle is a red-haired, red-bearded guy being carried off the field. He was wounded. And it's part of a much larger and funny story. Anyhow, thank you very much for
Thank you
coming
very
to
much.
Sunday Institutions. Senator Hooker, welcome.
Thank you. It's always nice to hear your historical perspective on things that are being discussed, Senator Benning.
Yeah, that's me, one big history buff. You should have been with us last Friday. You would have had a good time talking about the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum and all the things we've been doing over there.
All right.
I understand you have brought us a bill. And
I have.
we have not had an introduction or a walkthrough of this bill. I haven't quite yet figured out where it fits in our scheme of things because I don't know whether it will be coming over. I understand there's a counterpart in the House, and whether it will be embedded in the capital bill or we may end up having to deal with it independently. But I would like to use a few minutes this afternoon to talk about your bill, why you introduced it, and then have Becky give us a walkthrough so that we're on top of where things are with it.
Okay, thank you. For the record, I'm Cheryl Hooker, Senator from Rutland County, and I'm here to introduce S-245, which is a bill that you already have had information on because you've spoken about the need for a secure residential center for justice-involved youth. And this particular bill has two sections to it. First, it would end the immediate crisis that you've already heard about with kids not having beds to go to by fitting up the Southeast Correctional Center with 10 beds, approximately 10 beds for these justice-involved kids. And the second part of it would be to ask DCF to come up with a plan for a more permanent solution. Now, we know that when the administration announced that they wanted a new solution to justice-involved youth, we were told that the change would mean better care for these kids, but we haven't seen that. I believe the initial intent was to look to Beckett to have that facility renovated so that it would accommodate the need for youth in this situation. That has been delayed by several factors. First, by the town of Newbury, and secondly, by the pandemic, I'm sure. I mean, there are things that we haven't had a lot of control over. But we don't know how long that's going to last. And in the meantime, kids are, as you've heard from people who are in the field, kids are being held in untenable situations. And staff is being subjected to working conditions that are really not not a good situation for either the kids or the staff themselves. So this bill, it's a very simple little bill, just one
I like
two
that.
pages, two pages, Senator Mazza.
I like
Front and
that.
back,
Very,
that's
very
all.
simple little bill. How many times I heard that before?
Yep.
You know, it's like,
That's the big
you know, and
word
that's,
for it.
Yeah.
The jinx.
I know how you feel about that. And I know that no bill is simple, but it would offer a solution to an immediate problem and hopefully move things ahead so that we have a more permanent solution. So I know Becky has drafted the bill and she can go through it with you, but we really need some at least temporary solution now. And here is a facility that the state owns that we wouldn't have to cite. You know, it's already there. We wouldn't have to purchase it. It's already there. It already belongs to the state. And it would allow us to utilize that for this rather important situation. I know that, you know, we spend money mothballing it, the facility. The money that we spend on that could be put into renovating it. The money that we would have spent on retrofitting Beckett's property, which would not have been turned over to the state, but would have to be leased after we've accommodated it for our needs, could be put into moving this ahead in a timely fashion. I mean, I just worry that with delays as they happen, whether it's pandemic or resistance from not being able to get permits, this could go on for quite a while. And it's been going on for a couple of years now. I'm not sure the date. I remember being in institutions and talking about Woodside, and that was a couple of years ago. So if Becky is here to walk you through the bill. And again, it's a short bill, Senator Mazza, not a simple bill. It's a short bill.
Thank you very much, Senator. Becky, welcome back to Senate Institutions. You have the ability to screen share. If you're talking to us, Beck, we can't hear you, even though you're unmuted.
Hear it now?
There you go.
Okay. I just want to make sure, have I been given the host bill? Yeah, I do. Okay. Pull it up. Okay. Do you all see that?
We can see it. Do you have the ability to zoom in on it a bit?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Better?
helpful. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. So Becky Wasserman, Legislative Counsel. This is S-245, and it's a bill relating to a secure facility for justice-involved youth. There are two main sections of this bill. The first one deals with more of an emergency temporary situation, and the second one deals with more long-term permanent situation. So section 1 of the bill is asking for 30 days after enactment of the act. So depending on whether this is a standalone bill or, for example, in the capital bill, as was mentioned, the DCF has to fit up space for 10 beds at the former Southeast State Correctional Facility in Windsor to use as an emergency secure facility for justice-involved youth. And the facility shall be in use until a permanent facility is available. Going to page 2 of the bill, there is the amount of a little over $3.1 million that would be appropriated to DCF for use by BGS to do that fit up work. And that is sort of reallocating money that was appropriated to DCF for Woodside in 2020 and amended in 2021 in the budget bill, I believe. Actually, I need to check if that's the budget or the capital bill. I'll get back to you on that. So that would be where the money would come from for those 10 beds emergency use. And then for section 2 of the bill, this is looking to coming up with a permanent solution for justice involved youth. So that is asking the Secretary of Human Services to submit a plan to your committee, House institutions, to House institutions, not your committee, and Human Services and Senate Committee on Health and Welfare and your committee for a permanent state-owned and operated 10-bed secure facility for justice-involved youth. And that would include some recommendations, including where it should be located, whether it would be a new construction or fitting up an existing space, and any estimated capital and operating expenses for that permanent facility. And then the bill would take effect on passage.
Okay, Beck, could you scroll back up to the bottom of page 1?
Sure.
I'm looking at the last line, the facility shall be in use until a permanent facility is available. Is there any implication there that this short-term facility would not be used as a potential option for a longer-term facility?
The recommendations, no, I would say no. The recommendations in section 2 don't restrict that. Don't restrict it. It says it's for a state-owned facility, so that is state-owned, so it's possible it could fall into that. But the recommendations ask for where it should be located, so it's possible that that is a state-owned facility that could be recommended in the permanent long-term plan.
Okay. If you scroll back up to the top of page 2, that 3165, is that currently available, do we know?
Yeah, so I am just going to double check that. I'm not remembering at the moment if that was in the capital bill or the budget bill, and I will let you know shortly, but that was, it's money that was appropriated that has not been expended because it was for Woodside and it was never used. So it's reallocating that for this use.
And lastly, do you know if there is a bill in the House that mirrors this bill?
There is a House companion bill to this. I'd have to look up the number. I want to, yeah, I'll look up the number and I can let you know, but there is, it has the same language as this bill.
Do you know if our counterpart committee in the House has been discussing that bill?
I am not aware that they have discussed that bill, that it's been taken up.
Okay. Committee, I don't know if you have any questions about the bill itself. I can't see anything. So
yeah.
Senator McCormick, yep.
Thanks. First of all, I'm not going to speak for Springfield today because I haven't spoken to the town parents about this. But what I'm wondering about is the appropriateness. I mean, I understand this is an emergency. It's to help the situation out of a jam. But I'm wondering about the appropriateness of this for justice-involved youth. I mean, the Springfield facility is a real penitentiary. It's the high walls and the barbed wire and the hurricane fences inside, and it's sally ports to go from one part of the building to the other. It really is a jailhouse, and generally we deal with justice involved youth with, even the bad ones get some kind of gentleness because they're kids, and it's really locking them up in jail, isn't it?
Can I attempt to
Please,
answer
go
that?
ahead. Sure.
Thank you. Well,
Share
this would
screen down so
allow,
you can all see each other better.
Yes, please, please.
Senator McCormick, I believe that, this bill would allow for a refitting of the facility. The facility, exists, and whatever it would take to make it more appropriate, I believe, would be acceptable. As far as you're concerned that the facility is already a jail,
Yeah.
I think that probably with the refitting of it, there would be some accommodation, some changes made. But I mean, that would certainly be up to those who are in charge of renovating.
Inside the wall or outside the wall? Would be inside the wall, right?
The wall is there. Is
Yeah.
the whole? I'm not familiar. You're much more familiar, I think, with the correctional facility than I am. Are all of the buildings inside the wall? I'm not.
Commissioner Wasserman, you might correct me. I think it is. I think everything is inside the wall, isn't it?
Don't know.
I think you'd have to talk to Department of Corrections or BGS about that. I've never.
I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that I'm just trying to picture. I don't go there often. I'm trying to, the times I've been there, that it's this big. It's I say it's a penitentiary, and
Senator Moss.
My question would be, why would we spend 3.1 million for something that is going to be possibly used for a year or maybe a little over that and not be a permanent location? That seems like a lot of money, just temporary to do there. And I don't think a youth facility, I don't know, there's something about the Windsor State Prison is going to be labeled as a Windsor State Prison, but 3 million is a lot of money to spend just for something that's going to be used possibly for a year, right? Because if something else comes up, we abandon that space for $3 million.
Well, the only thing I can say to that, Senator Mazza, is that there's a need for a facility now. A facility exists that the state owns. If we can refit that for a temporary use and not knowing how long it's going to be, and not knowing exactly how much it's going to cost, because we haven't seen those figures yet. But we do have that money available, and perhaps it would be up to that amount. But
I think it'll be that with cost of construction to refit it to something that is for youthful offenders. But it's just something that once it's there, I don't think there'll be another spot in the future. I think it'll be probably permanent, and that worries me because that's a big decision to make, to put it into the Windsor State Prison. It's still a Windsor State Prison, but for $3 million that could go just for a year, I don't know if that's a good investment for the state. I don't just, thank you.
I'm not sure of other alternatives that have been proposed, but I know that this is an extreme situation. We don't have beds. It's putting a lot of stress on the facilities that we do have. We've heard other senators refer to this and talking about justice-involved youth and the need for beds. So, what alternatives do we have? And are we in a position now to move this forward so that things don't get out of hand?
But we'd have to also employ people to staff it. I mean, it's almost like a permanent facility when you start down that road. I mean, it could possibly be done within a year. Now, how would you go through hiring people and staffing it, spending all this money for a year? Could possibly. I'm not saying it could be longer, but it could be, but I think it slows down the process of a real facility in the future that we're looking for many years to come. If you're interested in this as a permanent location, which I don't know if you'd want to do that, but that'd be a different question. But just a temporary facility, I would think there's someplace we could rent or something for, I don't know, it's just a lot of money.
Fair question. We all talked about it.
All right.
Any other questions? Senator Hooker, thank you for joining us once again.
Thank you. It was good to be back in institutions, even virtually. Okay. Take
And
care.
I just
Will be
wanted
soon.
to clarify that the appropriation is coming from the budget bill. That's where it's being reallocated from.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Beck, thanks for coming by. Committee, that's all I've got for the afternoon. I know that breaks your heart, but Alex, you can take us off of YouTube. We'll say